Happiness through curiosity on TRS Clips. Do you think Jawaharlal Nehru was as bad as the conspiracy theories around him claim that he was?
So, if you give me a specific instance, maybe I'll be able to tell you, but I'll tell you what my view about Jawaharlal Nehru is. When he took over, India was sitting on a powder cage. The communal riots were happening, partition, migration was happening. India was a poor country, illiterate country. Also, he made a lot of mistakes. He assumed a lot of things. In international relations, he wanted to be a statesman. He wanted India to be a moral force, without realizing that moral force or authority comes only when you have hard power. So, hard power in terms of army, in the terms of military, he neglected that.
Did he grow up rich?
He was a rich man's son, very rich.
Sounds like a little sheltered boy
Very
mentality.
much. See, I want to draw your attention to one fact which this generation may not know. Everybody talks about Nehru and Gandhi having spent time in prison, long years in prison. The prison for them was some guest house, Aga Khan Palace or whatever. They could read, they could, carry on their daily activities in a normal time. They were just confined to that place. It wasn't prison. Not like solitary confinement, not like, what you go through, hard grind, nothing. And they didn't do, they were political prisoners. And they were treated by the British very gingerly, with velvet gloves, and they kept them in relative comfort, whether it's Mahatma Gandhi or Jawaharlal Nehru or any of those political leaders or their political prisoners. And therefore, they wrote books, Discovery of India, they wrote things. And he, of course, came from a very rich family. His father was a lawyer, then founder, one of the early members of the Indian National Congress. So, his worldview was influenced by the European thoughts, for instance.
There's so many people who come on the show and chat all over his legacy. So, I've always tried digging out the truth on this show, and I'm very open to hearing a whole positive side about him.
No, so, because I concentrate my own work in strategic and military matters or foreign affairs and all that, see, Nehru had this strong desire to be a world leader. And he wanted to project India as a moral force, having one mistaken notion again, having one freedom through non-violence. Actually, if you look back during those years between, say, 1920 and 1947, the kind of violence India went through was like what you described, Mexico, the Wild West. There were so many instances of violence. And British got scared of the naval mutiny, for instance, was the last straw on the camel's back. And so many other things happened. They had got enfeebled because of the World War II. So it's again a mistaken notion to say India won freedom through non-violence and ahimsa and all that. But Nehru wanted to continue that. He didn't want any military kind of a thing. He was suspicious of the military or the police, anything in uniform.
Why?
That I have not really, analyzed or not gone into it. But going by the evidence that we have, how he disempowered the military, how he treated the military shabbily, didn't allow them to expand, didn't allow them to acquire the necessary wherewithal to fight a war. And he misjudged China completely. The Chinese really played him along and humiliated him at the end of it in 1962. So, in my field of work, Nehru comes across as, again, to use your term, loosely informed or half-informed and highly opinionated, because he didn't apply his mind or didn't heed advice from the right people about what were the intentions of the Chinese against India, or the designs that Chinese had against India. And we paid for it. And that shadow of that defeat remained on the psyche of the Indian decision makers, on the minds of the Indian public for a long period, almost 40, 45 years. Except for the fact that in 1967, we did give them a bloody nose in Nathula, within 5 years of the humiliation in 1962. But that apart, we were always very cautious about how we deal with China. And we were always gung-ho about how we deal with Pakistan because of that historical legacy. And I blame Nehru for it, because he had a very romantic view of the Chinese, or the Asian solidarity as he described it at one point in time. But the Chinese were a completely different league. They knew their national interest, their self-interest, and they did what they wanted to do this. I mean, to humiliate India. Nehru did not look at national interest, he looked at his personal interest. That's my grouse against him.
So if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to TRS Clips for more.